We're dropping knowledge on Grambo Bros.
Before we get too far in, let's explain. Why don't you explain to people what is an SIP? What is a SIP bucket? What is a sub-irrigated planter? What's it do? Kind of give them the rundown. What's the basics if someone hasn't encountered this technology?
It's basically a cup in a cup system, and it's hooked up to a reservoir. And what Scotty found was that about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of water, and there is a wicking system in the bottom. Hold on real quick. There's a basket that sits at the bottom of this, sits down here, and about 2 inches of that basket sits in water, and it's cocoa. It's all based off of cocoa. Cocoa absorbs water really easily, and it's very aerated, so your roots have places to go. And I'll have probably 6-7 inches of roots in the bottom of this bucket that just sit in water all the time. One of the cool things about the sub-irrigation planters is that your soil medium has all the nutrients in it, and then water roots shoot to the bottom because it's always in search of that water. And then you end up with water roots too. So you have two separate sets of roots that you're caring for.
And it keeps it, the thing that makes it so fascinating is that it doesn't waterlog it. You know, roots need oxygen. So as Maestro put it, it wicks up through capillary action. So just like an old timey, like wick, like candle wick, like you'd have like an oil burner, and you'd have you just have like a white wick in the thing. And then it wants to, it's like, it's a weird analogy, but you ever walk through the snow and maybe there's only like 1 inch or 2 of snow, yet eventually it almost gets like to your crotch, you know? And so the more water you have, if you keep making the bottom of your pants wet, it's going to soak all the way to the top of your pants. Use that same sort of thing. Yo, Plants Parenthood, another man I know in real life, an awesome soul. Welcome to the Gramboard, my friend.
And the 2 inches of water has enough surface area and so little amount of water that you don't have to have air stones, because that's airspace is oxygenating that amount of water. And that's what's different about some of these other ones. There's one moving part in this whole system, and it's a float valve. And they've been around forever, and I've never really known a float valve to go bad. And in this case, if the float valve did go bad, your buckets would get filled with water. You'd have some waterlogged plants, but you wouldn't have a flood all over the room. Now, some guys have tweaked it a little bit and added, city water to it on a float valve. Things like that can make a mess. But the bucket that you showed there, the system, you're not going to flood a tent. You're not going to flood a room with it. It's about a 4.5 gallon reservoir, and then 2 inches of water sit in the bottom of each one of those blue buckets. And then with the cocoa wicks the water up into the plant. So you're no longer watering individual plants. And in this system, your plant calls for the water, and it has as much water as it needs, unlike everybody else who is force feeding a plant.
Holy Toledo asks, are these good for living soil? That I actually don't know. And then Derek Davis says, mine's in living soil. I re-amend and grow again. Interesting.
Right. We've had issues with some of the living soil that it stays wet too much. One of the things is that there's peat moss in living soil usually, and peat moss holds on to water. Whereas with the cocoa, you're looking for it to wick up and then evaporate out the top so that you've got a dry section and a wet section. With the some of the other systems, I've known that there's been issues. You need to turn it off for a week or two in flower for dryback.
Mm-hmm. Grace makes a good point. It's a fairly small area, but nothing says that you have to. Like, that's why I bring up the hempy buckets. Is that no one says you have to go real growers. Like Scotty says that Scotty puts out the specs. Here's how you make them. Get 2 5-gallon buckets, yada, yada, yada. But definitely that is a small battery. But I imagine there's probably someone with self-wicking beds.
Right. Yeah. The autopot system, they've got, 2x3 systems that are hooked up to a reservoir, and the bottom gets wet and it soaks up. And you just have to treat it a little differently. Yeah, there you go, J Crush. Earth boxes work the same exact way. You have a lower reservoir. You have to have some drybacks time, which we didn't really know about. And we've learned our lesson with some stuff. And that's what we were doing, was the dry back when we were using the living soil.
We're dropping knowledge on Grambo.